שיר למעלות, אשא עיניי אל ההרים, מאין יבוא עזרי, עזרי מעם השם, עושה שמיים וארץ, אל ייתן למות רגליך, אל ינום שומרך, הנה לא ינום ולא ישן שומר ישראל, השם שומרך, השם צילך, על יד ימינך. יומם השמש לא יקקה וירח בלילה, השם ישמורך מכל רע, ישמור את נפשך, השם ישמור צאתך ובואך מעתה ועד עולם. שיר למעלות, אשא עיניי אל ההרים, מאין יבוא עזרי, עזרי מעם השם, עושה שמיים וארץ, אל ייתן למות רגליך, אל ינום שומרך, הנה לא ינום ולא ישן שומר ישראל, השם שומרך, השם צילך, על יד ימינך. יומם השמש לא יקקה וירח בלילה, השם ישמורך מכל רע, ישמור את נפשך, השם ישמור צאתך ובואך מעתה ועד עולם. השם שומרך, השם צילך, על יד ימינך. יומם השמש לא יקקה וירח בלילה, השם ישמורך מכל רע, ישמור את נפשך, השם ישמור צאתך ובואך מעתה ועד עולם. אוי 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 אוי, שיר למעלות, אשא עיניי אל ההרים, אוי מאין יבוא עזרי, עזרי מעם השם, עושה שמיים וארץ, אל ייתן למות רגליך, אל ינום שומרך. אוי 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 אוי, שיר למעלות, אשא עיניי אל ההרים, אוי מאין יבוא עזרי, עזרי מעם השם.
Okay, Shabbat Shalom everybody, Shabbat Shalom. This is Hakham Melech ben Yaakov of the World Alliance of Qara'im, and welcome to this week's Torah study. We're going to be continuing our study in Leviticus chapter 18. We'll get to some other interesting stuff as well. It's probably going to be a bit of a shortened study because I was at a Shabbat meal here in Katsrin, and I had a very, very interesting discussion with a family, very interesting family, very nice family, who the younger guy, well, it's a son living with his father. Shabbat shalom, Grom, whoever you are. A son living with his father. I mean, both the son is married and has a child, and then the father travels back and forth between the United States and Israel, and they're both definitely rabbinical. And the father is kind of very open-minded. The son also, because he's his father's son. Shabbat shalom, Netanel, is also somewhat open-minded, but they're definitely rabbinical. I know them from the rabbinical synagogue here where I go, and yes, I do go to rabbinical synagogues because I need community. So until we set up our own community, that's what I do. And also because that's the way I grew up. I grew up as a not as a religious Jew, but as a traditional, kind of conservative Jew. So as long as we don't have our own community here, which I'll talk about in a second, then I do go to the rabbinical synagogue here. At any rate, we had a long discussion, and I guess I wasn't particularly trying to on purpose judge like their attitude towards some of my ideas regarding charism. But that's where the conversation drifted because obviously we're here in Katsrin. Katsrin is right near the northern border. It's about 10 to 15 miles from the border with Lebanon. And this week we had a number of missiles which hit Katsrin and fell into Katsrin, apparently for the first time ever. Well, I don't know about ever. Well, yeah, basically ever. And so conversations were pretty serious around the Shabbat table. And so to make a long story short, I was kind of giving my prescription for what I think the problems in the nation are and what the solution are. And in a nutshell, without getting into great detail, that the solution, my problem, in my opinion, is of course Karaite Judaism. By the way, I'm thinking of changing the official name or one of the names of the movement instead of Karaitism, instead of Karaites and Karaitism, because it's such a loaded word. It has such a history attached to it. And it immediately puts a wall up between, if you're speaking to rabbinical Jews, it immediately puts a wall up between you and those rabbinical Jews. So I thought about maybe adding the name or calling the movement, I don't know where it would fit in, maybe the secondary name of the movement, maybe a tagline or something like that, but calling the movement instead of Karaites per se, calling us Chozerim B'Tanach. Okay, what does it mean, Chozerim B'Tanach? Chozerim B'Tanach means those who are returning to the Tanakh. And it's a very it's a play on words, or it's a play on a phrase which is very popular here in Israel, which is chozer or chozerim b'tshuva. Chozerim b'tshuva basically means those who find their way back to Judaism, but in that case it means rabbinical Judaism, and it's kind of a very popular movement, I would say, here in Israel. People who grew up non-religious and then became religious, rabbinically religious. And those are called chozerim b'tshuva. Singular is a chozer b'tshuva. So I thought maybe, because that has kind of positive connotations overall in Israel, in Israeli society, I thought maybe we would call ourselves instead of the Karaites per se, again, I'm not sure where this new phrase would come in, maybe as a secondary name, maybe as the primary name eventually, maybe as a tagline, we'd call ourselves Chozerim B'Tanach, because it plays off on this idea that we're coming back to the religion, but instead of coming back to the religion of the rabbis, we're coming back to the Tanakh. And this also accomplishes a number of other things. As soon as you say the word Karaite to a religious Jew, especially, but even to non-religious Jews, immediately it puts up a wall between yourself and them, because Karaites have a bad connotation. Oh, those are the heretics that don't accept the oral law and that turn their lights. They don't light any lights on Shabbat, and they sit in the dark and the cold all Shabbat. and they hang their tzitzit on the wall, and they put their tefillin right between their eyes. You know, most of this, not the case, not the one about the sitting in the dark all Shabbat, but most of it is lies. You know, it's propaganda, lies made up by the rabbinites during the Middle Ages. But this is what people believe when they hear about, yes, when they hear about the Karaites. So, and on top of that, I think it's maybe important. You know, we've always been tagged. Our group and other similar groups have always been tagged as neo-Karaites. Neo-Karaites, meaning new Karaites, meaning Karaites who weren't born into Karaism, such as opposed to the traditional or Egyptian Karaites. I always call them the Egyptian Karaites because I think all of them basically came from no, maybe a couple, no, a couple from Lithuania, maybe a couple from other places, but maybe a couple from Crimea, but almost all of them came from Egypt. And I call them, always refer to them as the Egyptian Karaites, and they are the traditional Karaites. But we're different from them because they have adopted a lot of rabbinical practices over the centuries. They have become very rabbinized. A lot of their traditions are similar to the rabbis. A lot of their prayers are taken almost word for word from the rabbis. Their ceremonies are very similar to the rabbis, so they've kind of given up the fight to a large degree. They become very rabbinized. So we also want to make a distinction from that. And I don't like the word neo-Karaites because that just means like we're an offshoot branch of the Egyptian Karaites, which I don't think that's ultimately what we are. Yes, no, I don't think that's what we are at all. So we are honestly, in a certain sense, we predate the Egyptian Karaites in our views because the Egyptian Karaites became during the late Middle Ages in the 1500s or so, started becoming very influenced by the rabbis and started rabbinizing. So we're kind of the original, or attempt to be the original Karaism without the rabbinizing influence. So to call us neo-Karaites, the new Karaites, in a certain sense, that's a misnomer because we aren't. I believe I try to be, at least in this group and in this movement, closer to the original Karaites before they became rabbinized starting in approximately the 1500s. So for all those reasons, I was thinking of, you know, adding the tagline. I think I'll just add it for now. You know, like Karaites in parentheses Chozrim b'Tanach, those who are returning to the Tanakh, for all of the reasons I mentioned. Getting back to the Shabbat table, so we were talking because of what happened in Katsarin this week, which I'll get to in a second. We were talking a lot about, you know, what is going on in the nation here in Israel. What are the problems? What are the solutions? And in a nutshell, I tried to I tried to put forth the idea without explicitly saying, hey, I'm a Karaite. I reject the rabbis. I reject the oral law. To put over the idea that the religion as it stands right now is not accessible and not consumable and not desirable by the large majority of the nation of Israel. And as long as that's the case, then there's no way that we as a nation can return to YaHWeH, to our God. And if there's no way that we as a nation can return to YaHWeH, our God, then there's no way that we as a nation can solve the problems that we're facing at this point in time, which are very serious and will become more serious. So that was the basic idea of what I tried to get across. And I wasn't explicitly trying to feel out the community here or feel out the people, but I must say they were very receptive, especially the father, who must be, I guess, in his 80s. He was kind of like more open-minded and less, kind of an independent thinker type of guy. But the son also, who's a bit more, I guess, rabbinically traditional, was also very open to what I had to say. I spoke about things like um, prayer from the heart, as opposed to prayers that you read out of a siddur. I spoke about things like focusing more on the Tanakh rather than on other writings. Hint, hint, and stuff like that. And it was interesting to see that the people that were hosting me for Shabbat today were very open to these ideas. They wanted me to flesh it out a little bit more, but I kind of hitchamakti in Hebrew. That means I kind of demurred. I kind of weaseled my way out of it because I don't think I'm ready to go full blown Karaite quite yet. I want to feel out the community here. and feel how they would accept some of my ideas without, I don't want to beat them over the head, hit them right over the head and say, hey, I'm a Karaite. I despise your oral law and your rabbis and blah 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 blah. I want to go. I want to move in slowly and feel things out a little bit. So, but in regards to that, I think that I don't want to make an official announcement that this is going to be the place where we'll set up our first World Alliance of Qara'im community. But I want to feel this out. I want to feel the situation out for another month or two. And I really want to make sure that this is the right place because I'm not making this decision. Excuse me, I have to get some water. Oh my God. One second. If you guys only knew what position I am in here to be able to do this broadcast. Oh boy. All right. There we go. But so getting back to what I was saying, so this is not a decision, it's been a lot of soul searching and meditating and praying and asking my various gurus in life, such as Mariana Miknana, getting input from those people who I rely on for direction and advice. If this is a good place to be, and I feel that YaHWeH has pointed me to this place, has brought me to this place for various reasons, and I think this is where we should do it. But I want to feel it out a little bit more because I'm not making this decision. Yeah, I'm not making this decision for myself. I'm making this decision for all of us, who want to be part of an actual Karaite community, a World Alliance of Qara'im Karaite community, in person, not on the internet. And so I want to make sure that I'm making the right decision because it's a big decision. It's other people's futures are at stake, and yeah, so that's that. So but I think this is a good place. I think this is a very good place for a lot of reasons. I think it's a good place to raise families. I think it's a good place to just enjoy the land of Israel. It's beautiful up here in the Golan Heights. I think it's important for us to be here near the northern border as Karaites. I think by spreading the word and by us as a community praying to YaHWeH for him to help us. No one else here, I mean, maybe there's a couple of oddballs here and there, but no one else that I know is praying to YaHWeH by name here on the northern border for protection of Israel. And it's just a beautiful little city. The people are friendly, very different from a lot of Israel. If you've ever been in Israel, Israelis can be quite gruff and impolite and quite obnoxious at times. But here in Katsarin, it almost feels like I'm in Europe to a certain degree. People are very polite. The pace is a bit slower here. It's a small city. Everyone kind of knows each other. There's streets, tree-lined streets and driveways and houses and cars and houses and cars and driveways, and you almost feel like you're in a kind of like a small city or a suburban neighborhood. So I think it's a very good choice. There's a variety of schools here because if we don't at first set up our own schools, Karaite schools, then children will have to go to the local schools, which will almost certainly be the case at first. So there's a good variety of schools here. There are plenty of places to rent. There are plenty of places to buy houses as well as apartments. There's a lot of open land. So if we want to set up our own yishuv, if we want to set up our own Karaite settlement, there seems to be plenty of opportunities to do that. And it's just nice here. It's just nice here. Of course, as I mentioned last week, there are some disadvantages. The main disadvantage being that we are right near the northern border, and it's going to get ugly. It got ugly this past week. Maybe I'll sidetrack now and talk about that. So on, was it Wednesday? I think it was Wednesday, if I'm not mistaken. The sirens went off here in Katsarin. And I'd been through this only twice before here in Katsarin, and each of the previous times, what I heard were these kind of booms in the sky, and this was the Iron Dome, Kippur Barzel, the Iron Dome system. Um, this was the Iron Dome system shooting down the missiles and the drones as they came over from Lebanon, which again I mentioned is about the border is about 10 or 15 miles from here. I think like 10 actually, maybe 15 at the most. And that's what I'd heard two times before, but this past, I believe it was Wednesday, it was different. It was early in the morning. The sirens went off. I ran into the adjacent house where there's safe areas there, and this time it was different. The booms weren't far away in the sky; they were very, very close and very loud. The only way I can describe it, as I've described it to some of my friends, is if you're listening to thunder and lightning, you hear regular thunder, you see regular lightning, and then maybe all of a sudden you hear this loud clap of thunder, or first you see this big flash of lightning, and then a couple, and then afterwards this one, like, no, I forgot, the lightning's close. If it's close by, then they'll come at the same time. You see this loud flash of lightning, and at the same time, this loud clap of thunder, and everything shakes, and it's completely different from the usual lightning and thunder that you hear, and you just know that either your house has been hit with lightning, or your neighbor's house, or something very, very close. And that's exactly what it felt like when I heard the booms this time on Wednesday. I knew that this was different. This was not far away. This was close, and it was clear 100% that missiles had landed in Katrin, and indeed they did. I think it was about 3 missiles landed in Katrin. A number of houses were destroyed, including one that's about a 5-minute walk from where I'm living. And I went there and I saw the house. Went with the host here, and we saw a big plume of smoke rising up into the sky, and walked towards it. It was about a 5-minute walk, and there was a house on fire, burning, and another house that had been pretty much destroyed. And there were police and army and firefighters and ambulances running around all over the place, and it was quite moving, to be honest. I didn't know how I would react. I knew the day would come where I would very possibly have to face this kind of thing. I didn't know, would I be scared? Would I be terrified? Would I say, that's it, I'm packing up my stuff and leaving Katsarin? In fact, I wasn't scared at all. It was only hours later when I was sitting down at home and thinking about it all, where it's like, wow, this could have landed right on me. Then I started getting scared. But in the moment, I was not scared at all. Anyone like such as Mariana McNana, one of my skydiving friends, or one of my friends from the skydiving community, can totally identify with that. When you think about skydiving, you're only scared of it before, or if you have fear of it, then it's going to be before you jump out of the airplane, because you're anticipating what may or may not be, what may go wrong, what may go right. And then once you land on the ground, if you've had some kind of strange incident, then maybe you start saying, oh my God, wow, I could have killed myself. And that's when the fear may sink in. But in the time of the skydive itself, there's no fear ever. I've never, including on my very first skydive, which was in 2015, I've never in the middle of a skydive ever felt any even inkling of fear, because there's just no time. You're in the moment. So that's what it was like here. That's what it was like here. When it was all happening, I didn't feel any fear. What I felt was I was just kind of like, I was very reticent and meditative, and almost like just trying to sink it all in. There was so much going on. There was the house on fire. There was the big plume of smoke rising into the sky. The booms, followed by the big plume of smoke rising into the sky, followed by this silence, and then you hear ambulances and police, and then walking over to the place, and then seeing people rushing around. People crying. Some people crying. There were people, I think, their relatives that were in that house, and they were sitting down crying, and other people were bringing them food and drink, and police running around, and army. And I was just like standing there, like trying to take the whole thing in. And my reaction actually was, and I, again, Shabbat Shalom, I had no idea how I would react, but my reaction was that at a certain point, just taking all of this in, I actually almost started crying. That was my reaction. And I was crying as much because of the horrible thing that had just happened, and seeing the house on fire, and seeing the people shocked, the family, or the people who thought they were family members were in there sitting on the side, kind of, crying, hysterical, and people rushing back and forth, and the firefighters trying to bring the hoses over, and all of it's like everyone was doing their own thing, but everything looked very coordinated in a certain sense. And uh, so another thing I think that pretty much brought tears to my eyes was the fact that here I saw this nation, the nation of Israel, in their own country, in their own land, okay, not in some foreign land such as Poland or wherever, or Iraq, or any of the million places that we've been exiled to, but our nation, our people in our own land, all coming together to help each other out, all coming together to to be there to help the situation as was needed. And it was so um, moving to me, because remember, I'm only back in Israel now for a couple months, and I haven't really lived here since about 2012. I visited a couple times, but I haven't lived here since 2012. And it just to see the nation of Israel as a true nation in our land, okay, army with the Israeli army soldiers with the Israeli flag on it, police with the Israeli flag on their uniforms and on their cars, the firefighters also Israeli firefighting brigades. It just, as hard and as difficult as the situation was, it was very moving in the sense that here I saw a nation restored in its own land after thousands of years, uh, and uh, and acting as a nation. It was very moving. So that was my reaction, um, and that's where we stand. There haven't been any more sirens since then. I don't hold any illusions that this will continue. I think there will be. I think there's even a chance that Katrin will be evacuated, as some of the other northern settlements have been, such as Kiryat Shmone, which is about 15 miles away from here, and some of the other settlements. Um, but for now, it's been quiet. But that was serious. That was the first missiles. These were the first missiles that actually landed in Katsanin. There have been missiles that landed around the city and caught the grasslands around the city caught on fire, and apparently once or twice threatened the city. The fires came close to the city, but they were put out. But this was the first time that missiles actually fell on the city. And the bottom line was that there was only one person injured, and he was not too seriously injured, from what I understand. A bunch of houses were destroyed, and yeah, and then everyone kind of went about their day. What else are you going to do? So that was my experience with that. So all that being said, that is the that is the potential negative side of Katsarin. It is and could erupt into a war zone. But I feel, I have I won't call her a friend. I have an acquaintance who was scared of living in Israel. And so she went back to the United States, and she was living in a retirement community in Florida. I might be getting the story a bit wrong, but you'll get the gist of it. She was living in a retirement community in Florida. Um, and trying to escape the potential danger of living in Israel. And she was driving in this retirement community. She was driving one of those little golf carts that they drive in retirement communities in Florida. And another golf cart, some other older lady, crashed into her head on, and she ended up suffering concussion and breaking a bunch of bones in her leg, and breaking a bunch of bones in her ear. And now she can't hear correctly, and she can't walk correctly. So she tried to escape danger in the land of Israel and ended up getting injured in a retirement community driving a golf cart at about 20 miles an hour. Okay. So, our lives are not in our own hands. Uh, our fate is in God's hands, is in YaHWeH's hands as much as it is in our own hands. And we just kind of have to do what we have to do. And it doesn't mean deliberately put ourselves in danger, obviously. But at the same time, not to run from danger in fear, because danger can catch up to you anywhere. You can escape the land of Israel and then break your leg and lose your hearing permanently in a golf cart in a retirement community in Florida. I mean, what could possibly be safer than a retirement community in Florida? So all of this being said, so I think I'm going to go ahead in the coming weeks or maybe coming months at the most and officially say that we are starting our first World Alliance of Qara'im community here in Katsarin. I just want to see the stability of the situation a bit more before I make this decision. As I said, not for just for myself, but potentially for hopefully tens, maybe hundreds of people. But that being said, for those of you who are brave, for those of you who are real chalutzim, for those of you who are real pioneers, if you want to start moving to Katsarin with the possibility of knowing that in the end, maybe this will not be the permanent place where we choose for a variety of reasons, then come. So I'll make an unofficial announcement that our first World Alliance of Qara'im, our first World Alliance of Qara'im community will be here in Katsarin. Come, there's plenty of places to rent. It's inexpensive for Israeli prices. There's plenty of places to buy. There are apartments to buy. There are houses to buy. There are apartments to rent. There are houses to rent. If you don't even want to live in the city, there are surrounding much smaller, I guess you call them towns or settlements, where you can rent and buy. And yeah, let's get this going, man. Let's get this going. This has been a dream of mine for decades, actually, to have a World Alliance of Qara'im, to have an actual Karaite community rather than an online community. So those of you who want to pre-order, those of you who want to make your way over to Israel and want to start being part of an actual live Karaite community, then come to Katsarin. Let's do this. And the worst that happens is, okay, it doesn't work out, so we all collectively find another place to go. So that's that. Okay. So any questions, any comments? It's a beautiful little city. It really is. It feels like home here to me for many reasons. Okay, so then if nothing else needs to be said about this topic, then we will go on with our study in Leviticus chapter 18. So let me put on a song and get that all set up. Let's see what we got. Oh, we just did this one. Okay, we can go over this. One second. Okay. Okay. All right, let's cut the music. And oops. And let's dig in. So we're in Leviticus 18. Let me share the screen. Okay, we're in Leviticus 18. The laws of sexual relations. So there are 27 chapters in Leviticus. So that means basically that we're 2/3 of the way done in Leviticus, which is quite an accomplishment. And we've gotten through the hardest chapters. Let me say that, which were the sacrificial system and the details of the laws of purity and impurity. So I'm going to read through from the beginning. I don't remember exactly where we left off. If somebody remembers, maybe you can remind me. But it doesn't matter because I'm going to read through from the beginning, and then we'll pick it up at a certain point and get more into the details. But let me just start again from the beginning here. So we are in Leviticus chapter 18, verse 1. Deber YaHWeH el Moshe lemor. Daber el bnei Israel YaHWeH amarta alehem ani YaHWeH Elohechem. כי מעשה ארץ מצרים אשר ישבתם בה לא תעשו, וכמעשה ארץ כנען אשר אני מביא אתכם שמה לא תעשו, ובחוקותיכם לא תלכו. So remember, Israel's in the desert, in between Egypt and the land of Canaan. So this verse is looking back towards the Egyptians, looking ahead towards the Canaanites. Don't be like those people. Don't be like the people you lived with, and don't be like the people you are going in to conquer. Verse 4. Et mishpatai ta'asu, wa et chukotai tishmeru. Lalechet behem, ani YaHWeH Elohechem. Keep my judgments, do my judgments, and keep my statutes, to go in there, to go with them, or to go in them, to walk in them. Ani YaHWeH Elohechem, I am YaHWeH, your God. Again, we see this, I am YaHWeH, your God. I've mentioned many times, that when you see this phrase, YaHWeH is like he's pulling rank. He's reminding everyone, hey, it's me talking here. This is important. Listen up. You'll see that usually connected with topics and verses which are particularly, they're all important, but particularly where the Torah wants to draw attention to it as something like, hey, guys, I really need you to listen up here. Okay, it's me. I'm saying this. Okay, don't remember who's telling you this. Verse 5, Shmartem et chokotai, what mishpatai, asher ya'aseh otam adam chai bahem. So keep my statutes and my judgments, that a man, when he does them, shall live by them. Ani YaHWeH, and again, I am YaHWeH. And then we get into the nitty gritty. Shall I forego the southern jokes this week? Nah, I can't resist. I'll have to make a couple, I'm sure. Ish el kol she'er bisaro lo tikravu. Each person, every single man, every single person, should not come close to the flesh of his flesh, the meat of his flesh, the flesh of his meat. Legalot erwa ani YaHWeH, to reveal, to uncover their nakedness, or the nakedness, to uncover nakedness. I'm YaHWeH. So these are all euphemisms, as I think we've mentioned many times before. When the Torah is speaking about sexual issues or bodily functions, it wants to keep a little bit of decorum. Not that the Torah is not is not prudish. Quite definitely not. I mean, there are plenty of stories throughout the Tanakh that are definitely, let's put it this way, you will not have heard them in Hebrew school, or if you grew up as a Christian, you will definitely not hear them in Sunday school, right? So the Torah is not prudish, but it understands that there's no reason to sink to the level of the street to explain what it needs to say. It wants to keep a bit of decorum. After all, it is God talking. So, Shabbat Shalom, Oswaldo Escamilla. Right? So these are all euphemisms. So literally here it says, do not approach the meat of your flesh, or the flesh of your flesh. We see repetition. Repetition means emphasis. And the flesh of your flesh means in this case, those who are blood relations to you, right? Your flesh means your blood relations. So definitely don't come anywhere near your blood relations. And of course, it doesn't mean standing next to them, talking to them. It's a euphemism here for having sexual relations with them. Legalot erwa, to reveal nakedness. And again, that's a euphemism for sexual relations. So it doesn't mean that, I don't know, if you I don't know, if you have a little child or something like that, and you bathe them in the bathtub and you take their clothes off, that's not what's meant by legalot erwa. That's not what's meant by reveal their nakedness. Okay, it's a euphemism. These are euphemisms for having sexual relations with. So basically, what this verse is saying is, don't have sexual relations, any kind of, I'll say, don't have sexual relations with those who are near blood relations to you. In other words, people from the South, pay special attention here: incest. And I actually saw a video this week of it's a channel I watch. The guy's name is Drew Binsky. He happens to be a Jew, and he does these travel videos. He's been to every single country. You guys may know him. He has a lot of subscribers, a lot of followers. And he went to West Virginia and was speaking to the people there. And one of the people basically said, well, it's not a myth. There really is a lot of incest that goes on out here in the middle of nowhere in West Virginia. So I don't know. I've been through West Virginia. It's very beautiful, but I don't know what really goes on there. I've never lived there. Anywho, so Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Oswaldo desde México. Bienvenidos. Bienvenidos. Okay. So ervat avicha ve'ervat imcha lo tirale shall not reveal the nakedness of your father and nakedness of your mother. In other words, don't have sexual relations with your father and your mother. Imchahi, she's your mother. We saw a possible explanation of why it doesn't say he's your father, she's your mother, but I'm not going to get into it now because we already spoke about this last week. Lo tigale ervata. So don't have sexual relations with your father and especially with your mother. Verse 8. Again, I'm rushing through these verses because we went through them last week. Hold on one second. I just got to turn down the AC just for a second. Get a bit chilly in here. This door too. Okay. So right. So yeah, don't do what Oedipus did, right? No Oedipus. No Oedipus complexes here in Torah land. Oh boy. Okay. Verse 9. Erwat achotcha bat avicha o bat imecha moledet bait o moledet chutz. So do not have sexual relations with your sister, even if she's your half sister. This is saying, whether she is the daughter of your father or the daughter of your mother. So even if she's a half sister, you don't have both parents in common. You only have one parent in common. Moledet bait or moledet chutz, whether she was born in your household or born in a different household, right? Think Brady Bunch. Kind of thing. Well, Brady Bunch, I guess, was different there. They really were not blood relations, right? But let's say from a former marriage, not in the current household, it doesn't matter when or where this girl was born. If she is your at least half sister, and of course, kal v'chomer, meaning obviously it would logically follow that if she's your full sister, then that of course is the case. But if she's at the very least your half sister, then you do not have sexual relations with her. Okay, we had an incident. We have an incident in the Tanakh, of course, the story of Amnon and Tamar, where Amnon was the half brother of Tamar, who was the full brother with Absalom, and Amnon fell in love with his half sister Tamar and ended up essentially raping her, and then he was killed later on by Tamar's full brother Absalom, and then Absalom was later killed when he rebelled against his father David. So lots of palace intrigue, right? As we said, the Torah is not exactly is not prudish. Not all the stories are for children in Hebrew school or Sunday school if you come from that background. Okay, okay, so don't have sexual relations with your sister, even if she's only your half sister. Verse 10, erwat bat bincha or bat bitcha lo tirale erwatan ki erwatcha ena. The nakedness of your daughter's daughter or your daughter's son do not reveal their nakedness, ki ervatcha ena, because it's like revealing your own nakedness. Okay, we spoke about this last week, so again, I'm not going to dwell on this, but this is talking about your granddaughter, right? And obviously, this is addressed to males, okay? And I think Robert Alter pointed out last week that really all of these are addressed to males, right? Let me just see here. Oh, we skipped one, didn't we? It doesn't matter. We did it last week. Yeah, this is really being addressed to males. Your sister, your half sister, your daughter's daughter, or your son's daughter. Okay, so this is speaking about. So this is really being addressed to males, and I think Robert Alter pointed out last week that this is because the males would be would generally be the active participant. It doesn't mean that females can't seduce the males, but they are taking the active role in the sexual act, right? So this is directed towards males. So that's why it doesn't say in verse 10, it says your son's daughter, your daughter's daughter. Why doesn't it say why isn't it directed also to females, saying, don't have relations with your son's son or your daughter's son? Okay. it's not being directed to females. Obviously, it I think it's just logical, and we spoke about how to extend the Torah logically to fill in the missing pieces, since the Torah cannot exhaustively speak about every single possibility. But I think it's clearly logical that that a grandmother should not have relations with one of her grandchildren, and it doesn't need to say it explicitly. Okay, and there are a lot of one of the things we're going to see is that there are a lot of specific cases missing because hey, family trees are complicated. So if we connect every two dots on the family tree, we're going to be here for a heck of a long time. So the Torah is giving the main ones, and then the rest have to be filled in using logic. We spoke about that as kind of being the true quote unquote oral law of the Torah. And I despise the phrase oral law. The oral law, the phrase or are we frozen? No, we're not. The phrase oral law is a marketing ploy by the rabbis. We spoke about this last week. I'm not going to get back into it again, but I will say quote unquote the true oral law, which really means fleshing out the finite written text of the Torah with the infinite possibilities of day-to-day life. Okay, I spoke about it last week. I'm not going to get back into it now. Verse 11, Erwad bat eshet avicha, amoledet avicha ve'achotcha hi. I should just point out one other thing. I don't know if we spoke it last week. So verse 10, Ervat bat bintcha or bat bitcha. So your granddaughter, whether it's your son's daughter, your daughter's daughter, lo tigale ervatan, do not have sexual relations with them. Literally reveal their nakedness. Ki ervatcha hena, because it is they literally it says ki ervatcha hena. They are your own nakedness. Okay, what does that mean? They're your own descendants. Okay, so it's you're revealing your own nakedness. I don't know, it's hard to kind of translate the concept into English, so I'll just translate it literally because they are your own nakedness. I think that the point is understood, right? If you have relations with your own descendants, it's it's they're your descendants, right? So it's not like having sexual relations with yourself, but it's like, how can we put it in English? It's like that's how close they are to you, okay? They're so close, they're like extensions of you. Okay, more so even than, let's say, a half sister. Okay, your sons, your daughters, your grandkids are extensions directly of yourself. So for sure, if you have sexual relations with them, it's like you're really hitting close to home. You're really hitting that. Should I say that? Hitting that close to home? No, I shouldn't say that. Okay. Hitting close to home. Okay, verse 11. Erwat bat eshet avicha. So the literally, I'll translate literally the nakedness bat eshet avicha, of the daughter of the wife of your father. Let's talk about that in a second. Moledet avicha, that was born in your father's house, or that is descendant of your father. She's your sister. Do not reveal her nakedness. Okay, let's parse this out a little bit. So bat eshet avicha. So the daughter of your father's wife. The daughter of your father's wife. So we're talking about your father has married another woman, and they have a daughter together. And you should not have sexual relations with. But I don't understand something here, to be 100% honest. What is the difference between? Let me just read this here. או בת אמך, בת אמך, ערוות בת אשת אביך, ערוות בת אשת אביך, מולדת אביך, אחותך היא. So maybe, okay, I'll have to look this up, but I guess maybe what this is saying here, if I'm understanding it, if I'm parsing this correctly, so this is not your blood sister, but now, okay, maybe this is talking about the Brady Bunch situation. I think this is the Brady Bunch. Okay, this is the Brady Bunch situation. So Cindy should not, I think, on the I think on the set, if I remember correctly, Greg was having sex with Marsha or something like that. It's one of the Brady Bunch scandals, the actors. But in Brady Bunch land, then Greg, I think this is saying, if I'm understanding this correctly, that Greg should not be having sex with Marsha, even though they are not blood relations. They're not blood relations. Basically, it's talking about your stepbrothers and stepsisters, and I want to get a little bit of clarification on that. But that's the way I'm parsing it right here. Okay, Shabbat Shalom, Suriel. So I think we're talking about a Brady Bunch situation here. I think we're talking about stepbrothers and stepsisters. Let me read it again. I'll read it literally. Ervat bat eshet avicha, the nakedness of the daughter of the wife of your father, moledet avicha, who was born in your father's household. Achotchahi, this is your sister. Lo tigale ervata. Do not have sexual. Do not reveal her nakedness, or do not have sexual relations. I want to get a commentary on this. I'm not. It's not parsing in my head correctly. I think we're frozen. Oh, darn. No, we're back. Okay, so let me get a little commentary on this one. So this is Leviticus 18:11. Leviticus. Oh, come on now. Oh, right. I forgot there was a problem with the PDF file here. So 18:11. So the words are pretty straightforward, but I'm not sure. Oh, it doesn't even have a comment on it. Oh boy. So maybe we'll have to look elsewhere, but no biggie. All right, let's try to figure out what this verse is saying. Okay, so we read this. Your son's daughter, presumably a probe. Okay. Okay, so so this is going back a little bit. Presumably a prohibition. Okay, no, I don't want to get confused. We're looking at 11 here. So Robert Alter doesn't have any commentary on this. We have to look elsewhere. Let's go to some of these commentaries that are here. Some of these are actually very good commentaries. I'm reluctant to go to Ibn Ezra, although he's very good, but he is very influenced by medieval rabbinical thought, and so I don't think he's a truly reliable source. So we're in 18. What do we say? 11. Okay, I'm going to just read this. So your father's wife's daughter. If this clause stood alone, it would denote the daughter of a man's stepmother by another or previous husband, since father's wife in Hebrew always denotes stepmother. In which case, the man and the maiden, though no blood relations at all, would be forbidden to each other by virtue of the damsel's mother having married the man's father. It would thus differ from Leviticus 18:9, where the maiden is half sister either by the same father, same father. Okay, so there we go. Right. So this commentary here, this Ellicott's commentary for English readers, seems to be agreeing or confirming with my understanding of my potential understanding of it, which is that it's speaking about stepbrother and stepsister. And I want to read this one more time. The wife's daughter, if the clause stood alone, it would denote the daughter of a man's stepmother, the daughter of a man's stepmother by another. Okay, now I'm getting confused. It would denote the daughter of a man's stepmother. Okay, so stepmother okay, so a guy's stepmother is a woman who married his biological father. That's now his stepmother. And she has a daughter from a previous husband. Okay. Since father's wife in Hebrew always denotes stepmother, that's interesting. We could look at those sources if we had more time, but I don't want to do it right now. In which case, the man and the maiden, though no blood relations at all, would be forbidden to each other by virtue of the damsel's mother having married the man's father. Okay, so yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So this is speaking about your stepbrothers and your stepsisters. So even if they're not blood relations, if they are your, if they're living in the same household as you, and their mother is married to your father, then you're not allowed to have sexual relations with them. So again, we are talking about a Brady Bunch situation here. Okay, we're talking about a Brady Bunch situation. Okay, so Marsha, Jan, and Cindy would be forbidden by this verse to Greg, Peter, and Bobby. Bobby was a little bit young, at least at the beginning of the show, but he grew up. So okay, that's what we're talking about. Yeah, and it also makes common sense in a certain sense, right? Because if you grew up in the same household, it's a known phenomenon, I believe. It's a known phenomenon that if you grew up in the same household as other children, meaning your other step brothers or sisters, that naturally there is a reduced sexual attraction to them just by virtue of growing up in the same household, even if there's no blood relations. I think there have been some studies done on that. Okay, should we read one more commentary here? Let's see, Matthew Henry's concise commentary. That's just more preachy. I don't want preachy. Yeah, I think we get the idea. Let's leave it at that. Okay. Thank you, Ellicott's commentary. All right, let's go on to verse 12. Again, notice it doesn't say. Notice what it doesn't say. It says that if your if your father marries a woman and she comes into the family already having children from a previous marriage, then you're not allowed to have relations with them. It doesn't say that if your mother marries a man and he comes into the marriage with children from a previous marriage, that you're not allowed to have relations with them. Okay, but I think it can be logically implied that that would be the case. Okay, so let's think about the Brady Bunch here. Okay, so what was his father's name? Mike Brady. It was Mike, and what was it? Florence was the female. What was the name of the maid? No, it was Florence the maid. Carol was the mother. Carol? I can't remember I think it was Carol was the mother and Florence was the maid. Okay, we'll go with Mike and Carol. I think that's what it was. Okay, so Mike came with 3 boys, and Carol, if you guys don't know the show, then you're flat out of luck. What can I say? It was Carol. Thank you. Thank you, Marianana McNana, another child of the 80s to help me out when I need it. So Mike came with 3 boys, and Carol came with 3 girls. Okay, so are we talking about the situation here in verse 11? Irvat bat eshet avicha. Yes. So this is literally the Brady Bunch situation. So this is the mother comes into the household already having daughters, and the father has sons either from previous. Well, if it's with the current wife, then that's already blood relations. But no, actually, it's not blood relations to the other ones. But yeah, it is because it would be half mother, right? So that would put the father comes in. So this is a case where the father comes in with boys and the mother comes in with girls into the marriage. This is exactly the Brady Bunch situation. So we can call an easy way to remember this verse Leviticus 18:11. Leviticus 18:11. This would be the Brady Bunch verse. Okay, you can remember it for the rest of your lives. Leviticus 18:11 is the Brady Bunch verse. Okay, and okay, I think I'm beating the subject to death. I will point out once again that as far as I remember reading in the tabloids a long time ago, that Greg actually was having sexual relations with Marsha, or one of them. Something was going on there off the set or on the set, or I don't know, whatever. Anywho, This is the Brady Bunch verse, okay? But then the question arises, what if Mike came in with 3 daughters and Carol came in with 3 sons? Well, that's not what this verse explicitly says, but I think we can logically extend, we can make a logical extrapolation that that also would be forbidden, right? And the Torah is not gonna, is because it's needs to save space and time, it can't give every possible combination, every possible permutation. It brings a general principle, and then it's up to us to use our common sense and our judgment to extrapolate on that principle. And again, as I said last week, that's the hook that the rabbis use to completely change the Torah, to completely explode the Torah and make it into something completely different. YaHWeH did give us the ability to take the written laws of the Torah and extrapolate upon them using common sense, using logic. That's why we have judges. Okay, judges were supposed to be wise and God-fearing, and hating shochad, hating bribery, and they were supposed to judge cases based on the underlying written law, but internalizing those principles and then applying them to the myriad, the infinite possibilities of day-to-day life. Well, the rabbis took that transformation from the finite to the infinite, the finite written laws to the infinite possibilities of daily life, and they use that as a hook, as an opening to shove in a whole bunch of laws that don't make logical sense. And that is really what we call, that is really what the rabbis call their quote unquote oral law. I spoke about it last week, so I'm not going to get back into it this week. Let me drink a little bit of water. But basically, I think any common sense logical extrapolation would point to the fact that if Mike came into the Brady Bunch with 3 girls and Carol came into the Brady Bunch with 3 boys, that even though it doesn't say that explicitly here in Leviticus 18:11, that nonetheless they would be forbidden to each other. That would be considered incest for them to have any kind of sexual relations. Okay, so remember Leviticus chapter 18 verse 11. That is your Brady verse, Brady Bunch verse. Got that, Mariana McNana? Then why do so many Jews marry first cousins? Because first cousins are permitted to each other. Yes, the Torah says and the Talmud explains. Yes, there's no prohibition here of first cousins, right? Where do you see in any of this a prohibition of first cousins? First cousins are permitted. There are first cousin marriages throughout the Tanakh. Okay, after the Torah was given. Okay, verse 13. Okay. Is Kamala Harris around? I think we need to start whipping out the Venn diagrams. We need some Venn diagrams here. This is getting complicated. Okay, or at least like graphs. Or anyone have any graph paper? Anyone play Battleship earlier today and have some leftover graph paper? Jokes on West Virginia. Okay, we'll do West Virginia this week. We'll do West Virginia. Okay, verse 13. So the nakedness of your mother's sister do not reveal. In other words, don't eat your aunts. Okay, which if you saw some people's aunts, you wouldn't want it anyway. But even if they looked really, tzatza, as we say here in Israel, you still can't do it. Okay, so this is talking about your aunt. Because she's your mother's flesh, she's your mother's blood relation, she's your mother's blood, we might say in modern English. Okay, so right, okay, that's pretty clear. Verse 14. Ervat achi avicha lo tigale el ishto lo tikrav dodatcha hi. So don't. Okay, I'm going to translate it literally. Again, we have to do the literal translation, and then we have to understand what it's actually saying. So, ervat achi avicha, do not lotigale, do not reveal the nakedness of your father's brother. In other words, your uncle. Okay. El ishto lo tikrav. But what does that mean? Are we talking about homosexuality here? Do not have, and remember, this is all addressed to males. We've seen, right? So, does this mean don't have is this talking to males saying don't have sexual relationships with your uncles? Are we talking about homosexuality here? No, we're not. The verse goes on to clarify. El ishtolo tikrav. Do not approach his wife. Dovatra he. She is your aunt. Okay, so basically, what this is saying is that if you have sexual relationships with your aunt, who is not your blood aunt, right? We all have blood. We all have aunts and uncles who are not our blood relations because they're brought in by marriage. Okay, so your father has a brother, and his brother married a woman. Okay, that woman is not blood related to you, but nonetheless, if you have relations with that woman, it's as if you're revealing the nakedness of your father's brother, of your uncle. Okay, so it's not saying, this verse is not saying don't have sexual relations with your uncle. It's not talking about homosexual relations here. It's saying that if you have relations with your uncle's wife, even though she's not a blood relation to you, then it's as if you're revealing your uncle's nakedness. It's I can't say it's as if you had sexual relations with your uncle, but you're coming too close to your uncle's, you're revealing his nakedness. I think the phrase works, okay? Even in English, okay? Dodatrahi, she is your aunt, okay? She's not your blood aunt, but she's your aunt. So this is a second case, if I'm counting correctly, where we saw that even if it's not a blood relation, that if it's related, or should I say, if it's a blood relation, or if it's a non-blood relation that it has a close connection to a blood relation, or to a husband-wife, a marriage, then it's still forbidden. So it's not only literal blood relations that are forbidden. It's, as in the case of Leviticus 18:11, the Brady Bunch verse. Okay. No, that's not the Brady Bunch verse, is it? Where's our Brady Bunch verse? Yes, that is the Brady Bunch verse. Okay. That's not blood relations, and yet it's forbidden because your father and their mother are married. And over here, the aunts that it's being spoken about is not a blood relation, but because your father's brother, who is a blood relation to you, is married to her, then it's too close for comfort. Okay, wasn't that another TV show? We're doing all kinds of 80s TV shows here, aren't we? Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, guys from Asunción, Paraguay. Welcome, bienvenidos, Johan Swart de Paraguay. Bienvenidos a nosotros, nuestro estudio. Sorry, my Spanish is a little bit rusty because I lived in Portugal for 4 years, so I now mix up my Spanish with my Portuguese. Okay, so what do we got here? Right. Yeah, so this is not a blood relation, and yet it's forbidden. Okay. Now, what's interesting here is a structure that we have here. Okay. So here in verse 13, we have your blood aunt. Okay. Your mother's sister. That is your blood relation. And here we have your aunt who's not your blood relation. She's your aunt by marriage. So here we have blood relation aunt. Here we have aunt by marriage. Okay. In verse 10, we have blood relation, brother or sister, or half brother or sister. And here we have by marriage. Okay, brother or sister by marriage. In other words, stepbrother, stepsister. So that pattern is repeated. Okay, that pattern is repeated. Did I forget something here? Let's see. And verse 13, Ervat achot imcha. Okay, I think I did skip a verse. So verse 12 is your brother's sister. Verse 13 is your mother's sister. I'm sorry. Verse 12 is your father's sister. Verse 13 is your mother's sister. I think I've skipped a verse. Okay. So here we have whether it's your aunt by your father or your aunt by your mother, forbidden. And then here we have aunt by marriage. Okay. Dodatrahi. It literally says she's your aunt. Okay. So I don't know if someone's keeping score here, but if you guys want to make like a big family tree or something like that, and I don't know, put X's between all the ones that are mentioned in the Torah, it'd actually be a very interesting exercise. And maybe we'll do it. I don't know about this week, but maybe in a different week to see exactly which relations are spoken about explicitly and which are left out. And as Robert Alter points out, okay, where is it? So, verse 10, Leviticus 18, verse 10, I can close this out. Leviticus 18, verse 10 says, don't have relationships with your grandchildren, with your granddaughters, but nowhere in any of the Torah does it say don't have relationships with your own daughter. And that's exactly what Robert Alter points out here. Okay. Presumably, a prohibition on intercourse with one's own daughter is also assumed, but no satisfactory explanation has been offered for why it is not explicitly stated. Okay, so we see that there it's only. Oh my God, this is really uncomfortable. Jesus, no, not Jesus. No, why did I say Jesus? So there's no. Not every relation is explicitly forbidden in the written text in Leviticus 18 and other places where it's stated. Okay. And this is very important. It goes back to what we were saying before. We need to extrapolate. We need to use some common sense and logic to extrapolate. Okay. Does the fact that it nowhere says in Leviticus 18 that you are forbidden from having sex with your own daughter, does that now mean you're allowed to have sex with your own daughter? Well, strict Karaites would, I don't think any Karaite would actually say that, but I remember hanging out with a Karaite who shall remain nameless many years ago, and he said that he wouldn't stop at red lights because it's not mentioned in the Torah. Okay, so he doesn't feel any obligation to stop at red lights. Okay, I told him, tell it to the judge. Tell that one to the judge. Good luck with it. Lama'aseh, in reality, of course, he stopped at red lights. He doesn't want tickets, right? But he said, I guess his idea was he doesn't think he should have to stop at red lights. Okay, guy was kind of whatever. It doesn't matter. Anywho, so it's kind of the same thing here. Even though it doesn't explicitly mention that it is forbidden to have sexual relations with your daughter, for God's sakes, I mean, it's pretty obvious, right? If it's forbidden to have sexual relationships with your grandchildren, then for sure it's forbidden to have sexual relations with your own daughter. So the point being that the Torah cannot cover every single possibility, and so what it does is it gives enough points on the family tree, right? Point 1, point 2, to be able to say, okay, if I fill in all the rest, then I'm going to get the full picture. Okay. And I think it actually would be, maybe if I have time this week, I'll actually do it. Maybe I'll actually make a tree and show which relations are actually forbidden and in which verses by the Torah. And then we can see what's left out, because a lot are left out, but it shouldn't indicate in any way, shape, or form that those that can logically be extrapolated, such as not having relations, such as relations between a father and a daughter, it doesn't mean in any way, shape, or form that that's permitted. Now, if you argue with Rabbinites and they try to fight against Karaism, if they try to contradict you with Karaism, they might say, "Well, how do you, you're a Karaite. You believe only in the written law. It doesn't say anywhere in the written law that you're not allowed to have sex with your own daughter." Huh? How do you as a Karaite now defend it? Right. One of the things I like to speak about from time to time, if you notice, is when you get into polemics, when you get into polemical arguments with Rabbinites, how do you deal with it when they come up with certain things? Okay. So how would you respond to such an argument, such a polemical argument? And the answer is essentially what the answer always is. Okay, it's a misnomer, and this gets back to what we were saying earlier. It's a misunderstanding. It's a misnomer to think that the Karaites only follow what is written in the written law of the Torah. That is absolutely not the case. Okay, what the Karaites do is take the written law of the Torah and then try to faithfully extrapolate these finite written laws, because you cannot write forever, because again, now I'm getting to like mathematics and philosophy and infinity and all of this kind of stuff. But if you write every single infinite possibility in this world, then I mean, you'll run out of paper and space to write it. Okay, we'll take up an infinite amount of space and we'll take an infinite amount of time to write. Okay, that's the nature of infinity. So the Torah can't do it. It cannot cover every single possibility of humanity's, of 8 billion people or however many existed back in those days, but now 8 billion people interacting with God knows how many hundreds or thousands of other people per day, per week, per month, every single possible interaction that can occur. Okay, that's why you have judges. That's why you have courts. Okay, it's never been the role of written law to cover every single possibility. It's been the role of written law to lay down basic principles, and then for individual cases to be brought to judges who are wise, who are God-fearing, who despise bribery, and then have the judges work it out. And so they, if they're wise and God-fearing and logical, wise would include logical, and despising of shochad, of bribery, then they will be able to take these finite written laws in the written Torah and extrapolate it in a logical, wise, and faithful way into the individual case that's being presented before them. And that's exactly what we are supposed to do, or what that is exactly the way the nation of Israel and any nation is supposed to be run. Finite amount of written laws have to get translated into an infinite amount of possible human interactions, and that's done through judges, wise judges, hopefully wise judges, wise in the case of Israel, wise in the case of everybody, hopefully wise, God-fearing, and judges in it through court cases. Okay, and so the answer to that response, if someone said, "Hey, you're a Karaite," it doesn't say you can't F your daughter in the Torah, so ha 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 ha, right? You say, well, then you don't understand what Karaism is all about. You don't understand what the written Torah is all about. It's not meant to be exhaustive. I'm going to quote again this professor from Yale University named, now I remember his name, I listened to him again this week, named Joel Baden, and I think he's quoting someone else when he says this, but he one of his phrases that really stuck with me is he says the laws of the Torah are not exhaustive, they're best illustrative. They're meant to illustrate principles that then allow people to understand, lay people such as you and me, just the average person. Okay, maybe I don't apply as a layperson since I have the title of Chacham. Maybe I apply more as being one of the judges, but lay people to understand, to be able to read these laws and get the gist of what they're supposed to do and what they're not supposed to do. And then on top of that, and maybe especially to those who would be the judges over the people, where they really have to internalize these written laws and be able to adjudicate cases in a wide variety of possibilities. Okay, so that would be the answer. The answer would be no. You don't understand what a Karaite is. A Karaite is not. We as Karaites, we don't take every single word literally. Number one, and number two, we don't believe that only that which is written in the Torah is law. We believe that the laws that are written in the Torah are the basis for forming a just and righteous society, and it's filled out with logic, with wisdom, with judges that are able to apply these finite written laws to an infinite amount of cases and come to conclusions that are wise and fair and just. That would be the answer that you would say back to a rabbinite who might attack you on these grounds. And there are a lot of various points where they could attack on these grounds. Okay, it's a misunderstanding of what Karaism is. It's a misunderstanding of what the written Torah is, and so a rabbinite might say to a Karaite, "Hey, you take everything literally, and on top of it, it doesn't say anywhere that you cannot have sex with your own daughter." And so that would be how you would respond. Okay, along those lines, you would basically say, "No, you don't understand what the written Torah is. You don't understand what Karaism really is. The written Torah is principles, okay, is a finite amounts of principles that are the basis of forming a righteous society, and we do not understand that we do not take the meanings of the Torah, of the words of the Torah, literally. We take them in a straightforward or a pshat manner." Those would be the answers. Okay. Yes, Johann Swart, please go ahead and ask. Why was custom tradition in all ancient times that men took more than one wife? King David, who was regarded as a man after Hashem's own heart. Thank you, Rabbi. People to this day take more than one wife. Okay, there are even Jewish sects where polygamy is still practiced. Okay, I think it's, oh shoot, we're frozen. No, we're not frozen. Okay, this is a I think it's the desire of a man to have a large household, which can mean multiple wives and many children, and so it's permitted by the Torah. Okay, I can't answer any more than that. Okay, all right. Any other questions and comments before we go on? Okay, so let's move on. So now we are up to verse 13. And go for about another half an hour, and then I'm going to stop. So I started late today. Ervat achot imcha lo tirale. Ishar imcha. Wait, did I already read this? I'm sorry, we already read that. That's the ant. Okay, I'm sorry, we're up to here, 15. Erwat kalatra lo tirale. So do not reveal the nakedness of your daughter-in-law. In other words, your son's wife. Eshet bintchahi. Now, if you didn't know what a kala was, now you know what a kala is. Okay, is your, here's the definition. Eshet bintchahi. She's your son's wife. Lo tirale ervata. Do not reveal her nakedness. Do not have sexual relations. So, no having sexual relations with, oh boy, having sexual relationships with your daughter-in-law, with your son's wife. Okay, I remember. Okay, I remember I was listening one time to, I think it was Dr. Phil being. Okay, I shouldn't say this, but I'm gonna have to. It was Dr. Phil being interviewed by, I think it was Tucker Carlson, if I'm not mistaken, and I was listening to this with a very close friend, and Dr. Phil says was Dr. Phil. I'm not a big Dr. Phil fan. I've barely watched him, and I'm definitely not a big Oprah fan. I don't think I've ever seen any of her shows, as a matter of fact. But I do know that Dr. Phil used to be on the Oprah show. He got to start on the Oprah Winfrey show, right? So Tucker asks Dr. Phil a question, and he answers, "Well, Tucker, back when I was doing Oprah, I used to blah blah blah, whatever it was." And me and my friend looked at each other and said, "Back when I was doing Oprah, oh my God!" All right. I hope you guys didn't understand that one. For those who did, okay. Back when Dr. Phil was doing Oprah. Okay. Does not bring a pretty picture to the mind. Let's put it this way. The visual on that one is definitely something that you want to avoid. All right, verse 16. Ervat eshet achicha lo tirale ervat achicha hi. So this is actually very interesting. So the nakedness of your brother's wife do not reveal. She is ervat achicha hi. She is the nakedness of it is the nakedness of your brother. So you cannot have sexual relationships with your sister-in-law. Okay. What's interesting about this is, and we will get to the laws of this eventually, is that if your brother dies, then not only are you permitted to have sexual relations with his wife, you are enjoined, you are encouraged, you are commanded essentially by the Torah to have sexual relationships with his wife if they didn't have children together, if he didn't leave any children. That is called yibum, or levirate marriage. That was exactly the case that we saw in the case of Er Onan back in Genesis 35, is it, if I'm not mistaken, thereabouts. Okay, Er died, and then Onan had relations with Tamar, who was Er's wife, but Onan would not consummate, and therefore was put to death, and now Tamar was once again a widow and was waiting for the third son of Yehuda, who was Shelach, to grow up. But Yehuda did not want to give Shelach to Tamar because he felt, listen, I already lost two sons to this woman. This woman is the Black Widow. She has the kiss of death. So eventually, what happened is that Tamar went and dressed as a prostitute and seduced Yehuda and had relations with him and gave birth to Peretz, who was the antecedent, the ancestor of David. Okay, if you remember, it's back in Genesis chapter, I believe 35, if I'm not mistaken. At any rate, the point being that what Onan was supposed to do and what Shelach was supposed to do, what Onan was supposed to do and did not do, refused to do, and it even uses the word there it uses the word to give seed to his brother. Onan, Er's little brother, or Er's the next oldest brother in the family, was supposed to have sexual relations with Tamar, with his older brother Onan, Onan, Er's younger brother, was supposed to have sexual relations with Tamar, who was his older brother Er, who had died, Er's wife. Okay, to bring a child to the world in the name of his deceased brother Er. Okay, and he refused to do it, and then he was put to death, and then, as I said, Yehuda refused to give Shelach to Tamar, and so then eventually Tamar seduced Yehuda himself and gave birth to Peretz. Okay, figure that family tree out. But at any rate, the point being that it's not a contradiction, because we're talking about here while your brother is alive, you're not allowed to have sexual relations with his wife. But if your brother dies and did not leave any children in the world, then you are not only are you not allowed to have sexual relations with his wife, you're required by the laws of Yibum, by the laws of levirate marriage, to have sexual relations with his wife and to bring a child who then will be a child in your deceased brother's name. Okay? Any questions, any comments? Anybody? Okay, let's move on. Verse 17. And we're going to go for about another 20 minutes. Erwat isha ubitra or bitan lo tirale. So do not reveal the nakedness of a woman and her daughter. Okay? Let's talk about that one first, because here we have the etnach. The atnach, which means that's a semicolon in the verse. So do not have sexual relations with a woman and her daughter. Okay? You're not allowed to have sexual relations with a woman and her daughter at the same time. Okay? This might be the fantasy of some men, and I know that there is a lot of, shall we say, movies out there that deal with this particular fantasy, but it is explicitly forbidden by the Torah. Okay? Let's move on. Et bat bina wa et bat bita lo tikach. So, and tikach means marry. Okay, legalot ervata sha'ara hena zimahi. Okay, so let's talk about this a little bit. So first, up to here, it says don't have relations with a woman and her daughter. And now we got to figure this out. Et bat bina, et bat bita. So her daughter's son, et bat bita, and her daughter's daughter, lotikach, do not marry. So whose daughter's son? I'm sorry, whose son's daughter, bat bina, the daughter of her son, and the daughter of her daughter, do not marry. So so I think what's going on here, and we'll clarify it with the commentaries, is that you are married to a woman or you're having sexual relations with a woman, And wait a second. Now I got confused. 1 second. Bita lo tigale. Et bat bina or et bat bita lo tikach legalot ervata. Okay, wait a second. Wait a second here. It gets confusing, right? With the family trees. So you're having sexual relations with a woman. So her son's daughter, meaning that would be her granddaughter or his daughter's daughter or her granddaughter through her son or her daughter. So her daughter, lotikach, you cannot have sexual relationships. Okay, so I see what's going on here. Okay, so not only if you're having sexual relationships with a woman, not only are you forbidden to have sexual relationships with her daughter, okay, at the same time or maybe at all, but also with her grandchildren, with her granddaughters. Okay. So if you're having sexual relationships with a woman, if you're married to a woman or having sexual relationships with a woman, your concubine, wife, then not only is it forbidden to have sexual relationships with her daughter, but also with her granddaughters. Okay. Tikach means literally to take, but the language there always means marriage. So you cannot marry a woman and her you cannot marry a woman and her granddaughters, because in doing so you will reveal her nakedness. In other words, you're getting too close for comfort. It's kind of like it's very hard to translate that concept into English, but sha'rahena, they are her flesh and blood. They are her flesh. Okay, so if you have relationships with one of her granddaughters, or if you marry one of her granddaughters, if you take one of her granddaughters as wife, then it's too close for comfort because you already have her as a wife. Okay, it's incest basically. Okay, sherahi, it is her close of kin, or is her close flesh. Zimahi. Okay, what is this word zima? The word zima means more than promiscuity. How can we translate it? Well, let's see what the translate is here. Lewdness. Okay, let's get the BDB. Plan, device, wickedness. Evil device, wickedness of unchastity. So in modern Hebrew, zima means basically a smut, not slut. So zima means basically smut, or something that is just. I'm trying to think of a good word in English. Lewdness, right? I guess would be a good translation. But it also could mean things. It could also mean just wickedness, not necessarily speaking about smut or pornography or something that is. I'm trying to think of the right word. Something that is that is basically like pornography or prostitution, or not prostitution, smut. Okay. But in this context, that's what it means here, right? So lewdness, I guess, would be a good translation. How they translate it here? Wickedness. Okay. They translate in the general sense of wickedness. Okay. But however it's translated, it is a disgusting thing to do. It was an evil, lewd, wrong thing to do. Okay. To have sexual relations with a woman and her daughter, or woman and her granddaughters. Okay. What about a woman and her great granddaughters? Why doesn't the Torah mention that? Can we extrapolate that would also be the case? Or is that so far away that it doesn't matter anymore? Again, this would be questions that would be left to the judges. Okay. It would really be a rare case, right? Because how are you going to marry a woman and a granddaughter? But I guess in societies where children are born, where people have children at very young ages, then I guess it is possible. I knew someone who actually sometimes attends these studies, who at the age of 65 was a great grandmother. So I guess it is possible. Okay, but rare. So I would say, my opinion, if I were judging such a case, I would say, of course, a woman and a great granddaughter are also forbidden. Maybe if for no other reason, just to play it safe. But that case would not be a common case because of the difference in ages. Okay, verse 18. לא תיקח לצרור לגלות ערוותה עליה בחייה. Okay, so this is the forbidden. Let me translate it literally. A woman and her sister you shall not take, meaning take as wives. The tzror, to pit them against each other, or to cause trouble for each other, or to, let's say how they translate here, as a rival. Okay, Negalot ervata aleha b'chayeha, to reveal her nakedness upon her while she is alive. So what does that all mean? So there are some ambiguous direct objects here. So literally what this says, let me translate it literally. A woman and her sister you shall not take as wives together. Okay, shall not take as wives, shall not take, in parentheses, as wives. Litzror, to cause them strife between each other. Okay. Ligalot ervata, to reveal her nakedness. Whose nakedness are we speaking about here? There are two women. There's the woman and her sister. Okay, so I think this ligalot ervata is to reveal her nakedness. It's talking about the sister, the woman's sister. So don't reveal the sister's nakedness. Aleha, aleha means literally upon her, but it means in her midst, in her presence. In her presence, I think would be a good translation. So aleha, upon who? Aleha means upon her. Upon who? The original woman. Okay. Negalot ervata aleha bechayeha. So I think aleha is referring to the original woman, and bechayeha is referring also to the original woman. So what this is saying is, do not reveal the nakedness of a woman's wife in the presence of the woman while she is still alive. Okay. If the woman dies, then you can marry. Did I say wife? I meant sister. If the woman dies, you can marry her sister, but you cannot reveal the nakedness of her sister in the presence of the woman while she's still alive. Okay, that's what that verse is saying. And I think Robert Alter has something to say about this verse. So let's go to that. A woman with her sister. Of course, they're going to mention Rachel and Leah. As many interpreters have noticed, this and several other prohibitions in the list are explicitly violated by figures in the national narrative of Israel. Jacob marries two sisters, right? Rachel, Leah, and Rachel. Abraham claims that Sarah is his half sister. Okay, when he is trying to escape from Avimelech. David's daughter Tamar appears to think it is possible that her father can arrange a marriage between her and her half brother. We mentioned that before. That's Tamar and Amnon. Amnon and Tamar. Either these laws represent a priestly reform in sexual practice. This is now getting into what's called documentary hypothesis. I won't even go there. As Milgram proposes, or certain more acceptable sexual unions had come through evolving social consensus to be regarded as taboo. That's I think all of this is irrelevant. It doesn't matter. Okay. As rivals, to become rivals, this is the technical term grounded in realism. Right. So here in Leviticus 10:18, this word litzror is being translated as to become rivals, to make strife with each other. I think would be a good translation. But here they translate it as to become rivals. And Robert Alter is, what is he saying here? Okay, that what does it mean? It's grounded in realism. For the condition of co-wives in polygamy, there's a lot of tension between co-wives in polygamous relationships, and the actual word would be not polygamy. Polygamy is general. Polygamy means one person having more than having multiple spouses, not spice, and so that could include uh, a female having more than one husband. That would also be included under the rubric of polygamy. So the real technical term would be polygyny, where the A is replaced with a Y. It means multiple women, like GY, like gynecologist, or what's another one where GYN is used to represent women. At any rate, GYN especially means or GYN, not especially GYN is the Greek root for women or for woman. So polygyny, okay, that would be POLYGYN. Why? Polygyny would mean having multiple women or having multiple wives. Okay. At any rate, neither here nor there. Whenever polygamy is used, it's usually understood that it's talking about a man having multiple wives. Okay. So the point here is that the reality is that if you marry a woman and her sister, it's going to create a lot of jealousy. It's going to create a lot of rivalry. It's going to create a very very unhappy living situation, as we saw in the case of Rachel and Leah. They kind of had miserable lives because they were both married to Yaakov. They were constantly um, trying to outdo each other or trying to have children at any cost. Leah constantly felt that she was not loved by Jacob, and as it says in the book of Genesis, YaHWeH had mercy on Leah because of this, and therefore opened her womb, and so she has Jacob's first 4 children, and Rachel doesn't have biological children until the end of uh of Jacob's wife slash concubines giving birth, when he has Joseph, and then Benjamin. Okay, so with two sisters, uh, who are already, there may be sibling rivalry there, to put them in a situation where they are now sister wives in a marriage to a single man is really causing them to have a miserable life, as we saw in the case of Rachel and Leah. And if you read through the various verses where it speaks about Rachel and Leah, and the chapters where it's dealing with them giving birth, you see that they were really in pain, or they were really struggling uh, because of this situation. Okay, especially Leah. Well, both. Leah, she was the Isha Snua, she was the unbeloved, literally hated, but it doesn't mean that. The wife who was not loved, whereas Rachel was the wife who was loved. And again, YaHWeH had mercy on Leah, seeing her predicament, seeing that her husband didn't really love her, because Jacob never wanted her, right, as a wife. She was forced upon Jacob by Lavan, and so where were we? Right. So she was not Jacob's she was not the love of Jacob's life. She was just forced upon him. And yeah, that's not an easy life. Okay. I had a very close friend who was a woman who was in a polygamous relationship. She was a second wife in a sister wife situation, and she was an older woman. I think she was already in her 60s at the time, and she was brought on basically as a nanny, kind of to take care of the first wife's kids. I think there were 7 kids, and she had just an absolutely miserable experience in that situation, to the point where it drove her to die. Basically, she basically became addicted to drugs, from what I understand, and ended up dying. And that seems all to have been a direct or very close result of this polygamous relationship that she was in, being the second and clearly unloved wife in a polygamous relationship. Of those of you who have been around Karaite circles for a while, you know exactly what I'm talking about. A wonderful, wonderful, special woman who we all miss. Okay. We're going to go a little bit more. I don't think I'm going to get the end of this chapter. Maybe actually I should stop here, because now we get into other things that will take a lot of time to explain. Okay, but I'll just read. Why don't I just read to the end of the chapter, and then I'll make a note that this is where we got to verse 19, and then we'll pick it up next week. I'm gonna stop it, but I want to read at least to the end of the chapter, so at least we get a preview, and I'll just do a quick translation. Okay, so verse 19, Wa'el Isha b'nidat umata. So a woman, when she is in the period of her impurity, this means when she's having her period, right? It's a 7-day. We learned back in, oh God, Leviticus chapter, I can't remember what chapter it was now. We've been through so many, but not too long ago, we learned that a woman, when she enters her menstrual period, right, for 7 days, she becomes impure. She gets the cooties. She becomes ritually impure. So while she's in the state, while she's has her period, lo tikrav legalot ervata, you shall not uh, approach her. You shall not have sexual relations with her. This is actually a big no-no in the Torah. Not to have sexual relationships, or to have having sexual relationships with a woman while she's having her period is actually considered, believe it or not, a very, very serious crime in the Torah. It's mentioned a bunch of times. Let's move on. Verse 20, Ve'el eshet amitcha lo titen shichvatcha le'zara litam'a ba. This is, I'll just translate it. Ve'el eshet amitcha. So so lo titen shichvatcha. So do not have sexual relations with, literally do not lie down with. But again, that's a euphemism for having sexual relations with. So do not have sexual relations with your fellow man's, and in this case, it means your fellow Israelite's wife. Okay? Shechatcha, is that lizareh or lizara? I can't see here. I think it's lizara. Okay? In other words, don't release seed into your, literally what it's saying is don't lie down to release seed, or don't release a layer of seed into your fellow Israelite's wife, litamaba, thereby becoming impure through her. And this could be speaking about, well, we're going to deal with this all next week, but this could be speaking about either moral impurity or ritual impurity, or both. I want to move on. We'll talk about this next week. Verse 21. Mizaracha lo titen la'avir lamolech v'lo techalel et shem Elohecha ani YaHWeH. So do not give your offspring, your seed. You know what? We're going to do this next week. This is I can't do this in a quick way. What I can do is I could just read it with zero commentary. That's what I'll do. Okay. Mizaracha lo titen avir lamolech. You can follow along in English or whatever language you wish. V'lo techalel et shem Elohecha ani YaHWeH. Verse 22. Wa'et zachar lo tishkav mishkavei isha to'evahi. This is the prohibition against homosexuality. I'll have something, fair amount to say about it. Not a fair amount, but I'll have something to say about it. Verse 23, ובכל בהמה לא תיתן שכבתך לטמאה בה, ואישה לא תעמוד לפני בהמה לרבעה תבל. Who? This is the prohibition against bestiality. Verse 24, אל תטעמו בכל אלה, כי בכל אלה נטמאו הגויים אשר אני משלח מפניכם. Verse 25, again following in English or whatever language you want. ותטמא הארץ ואפקוד עוונה עליה ותקיא הארץ את יושביה. If you do these sexual sins, these sins of sexual immorality, the land of Israel will spit you out. שמעתם אתם את חוקותיי ואת משפטיי, ולא תעשו מכל התועבות האלה האזרח והגר הגר בתוככם. Verse 27. כי את כל התועבות האל עשו אנשי הארץ אשר לפניכם, ותטמא הארץ. Verse 28. ולא תקיא הארץ אתכם בטעם אחם אותה, כאשר קאה את הגוי אשר לפניכם. Verse 29, כי כל אשר יעשה מכל התועבות האלה, ונכרתו הנפשות העושות מקרב עמם. And finally, verse 30, שמעתם את משמרתי לבלתי עשות מחוקות התועבות, אשר נעשו לפניכם, ולא תטמאו בהם אני YaHWeH אלוהיכם. Again, ending with אני YaHWeH אלוהיכם, showing this is really important. I'm personally putting my stamp on these on these laws because they're so crucial. They're so important. Okay. All right. So with that, I think we're going to end. It's been a good study. Shorter one than usual, but a good study. You're welcome, Johan. Welcome anytime. And yeah, we will pick it up next week. We'll start in Leviticus 18, verse 19. I really should make a note of that. Let me do that right now for myself. No, I'll leave it. I'll just remember. Okay, so we finished the portion here on incest. And now we're going to get into other forms of sexual sins and non-sexual sins, because it also speaks about Molech. That's child sacrifice, or usually understood as child sacrifice. It is child sacrifice. Okay. And then we have these kind of summary sentences over here. Okay. So we're going to pick it up next week in Leviticus 18, verse 19. Hope you enjoyed this study. Appreciate your comments, Johan. Welcome anytime. Please like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Get the word out. Let's build these studies up. And yeah, we will pick it up again next week. So I wish everybody a Shabbat Shalom and a Shavua Tov, wherever you are in the world. Hope you enjoy the rest of your Shabbat, or if you've already started the new week, as we have here in Israel, then I hope you have a great week. So see you again soon. This has been Hakham Melech ben Yaakov of the World Alliance of Qara'im. Thank you for joining me, and see you again, Be'ezrat YaHWeH, next week.
May Hashem, I say, Shemayim Oretz, da-da-da-da-dam, 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 da-da-dee-da-dam. Shamayim Oretz.